Elvis Presley sat alone in his dim dressing room, the roar of last night's audience reduced to a distant hum. His hands trembled, not from exhaustion, but from raw anger. In the mirror, the king of rock and roll stared back at a man shattered by absurd humiliation. A leather-clad biker had swaggered on stage and publicly mocked him under the spotlight. Elvis had said nothing. He'd simply walked away. Now he cradled a worn medallion he'd worn since childhood, its cool weight grounding him. "I'm not here to fight," he whispered into the silence, "but I know how to win without throwing a punch." Elvis Presley's Cadillac coasted into the gas station just as dusk settled over that nameless Louisiana crossroads. He'd insisted on fueling up himself. No entourage, no frills, just a need to stretch his legs before the evening's show. The station's single pump glowed in the twilight. Its attendant, a teenager with a grease-streaked face, offered Elvis a nod but kept his distance. As Elvis removed the nozzle, 3 motorcycles roared in, their headlights carving arcs through the gathering gloom. The riders dismounted in tight, deliberate formation. One of them, broad-shouldered and bristling confidence, strode forward, leather vest flapping. The man's eyes reflected the pump's harsh light. "I heard the king's in town," the rider drawled, voice thick with challenge. He eyed Elvis's open collar and gleaming ring. "But he's just a man in tights, ain't he?" Elvis set down the nozzle and turned to face the trio. No glare, no fury, just that calm intensity woven through years of facing down crowds. "Good evening," he said quietly, "just passing through." The rider spat on the cracked pavement. Real men don't parade in sequins and croon like schoolgirls. He stepped closer, boots scuffing across oil stains. Elvis straightened, hands at his sides. "I'm not here for trouble." The rider's companion laughed, a raw bark in the stillness. "Then why you here at all? You lost your way from the stage?" A muscle ticked beneath Elvis's cheekbone. He unclasped his coat and let it drop, revealing the blue shirt beneath. "I'm here to perform, tonight at the town hall." "Funny," the leader said, stepping even closer. "Town hall's for real music, not for glitter princes." He raised his chin and spat again, more venom in the gesture. Elvis's hand hovered near his pocket, an instinct from a lifetime of tension. But he held back. He remembered his mother's warning, "You don't have to fight to be strong." Before the rider could react, Elvis placed a hand on his shoulder. "I wish you'd come listen tonight," he said, voice steady. "You might hear something you didn't expect." The rider jerked away as if burned. "I don't need your pity." He waved a dismissive hand and the trio mounted their bikes. Engines revved, blue smoke drifted, and they roared off into the approaching night. Elvis finished filling his tank, replaced the nozzle, and slid back into the Cadillac, locking doors with a deliberate click. He drove the remaining miles in silence, the evening breeze whispering through open windows. By the time he reached the small town hall, tension had coiled in his shoulders like a live wire. Inside, the auditorium's wooden floorboards groaned under the weight of anticipation. A half-full crowd of townspeople, mostly factory workers and housewives, settled into folding chairs. Spotlights were dimmed. Only the stage's bare bulb cast a muted circle of light. Elvis stepped into that light in blue jeans and a leather jacket. No rhinestones, no flash. He grasped the mic stand and began with a hushed blues number, voice low and smoky, bending notes like soft metal. The crowd leaned forward, surprised by the raw intimacy. Halfway through, a piercing roar cut short the applause, the roar of a biker's engine revving too close. Red Slater, his name emblazoned in silver on his leather vest, strode through the side door, eyes blazing. He raised a brown glass bottle in one fist, the label long peeled away. Without hesitation, he hurled it at Elvis. The bottle spun through the air and shattered harmlessly against the back wall, shards raining like dark confetti. A hush fell so complete it felt like the world held its breath. Elvis froze mid-lyric, mic poised at his lips. The audience sat rigid, shame and shock warring on their faces. Red laughed, swaggering into the aisle. "You call that singing?" he sneered. Elvis set the mic stand aside and stepped back, expression unreadable. He turned and walked off stage without a word. The house lights snapped on, and murmurs rippled through the hall, some angry, some confused, some guilty. Outside, Red's laughter faded into the night, leaving a silence heavier than any roar. Back in his dressing room, Elvis closed the door with a soft click. His hands trembled, not from weariness but from anger and hurt. He stared at his reflection, blue-eyed and vulnerable, then reached into his shirt for the old medallion that had hung at his throat since boyhood. He clasped it tight, whispering to no one, "I'm not here to fight, but I know how to win without throwing a punch." Elvis Presley sat alone in his dressing room, fingers circling the medallion that hung at his throat. The metal was cool under his shirt, the only anchor he felt after tonight's absurd public humiliation. He closed his eyes against the memory, the dull roar of engines, taunting shouts, and the sting of seeing that bottle arc toward him from the empty seats. A lifetime of chanting crowds had never felt so hostile. Before the show, he'd stopped at a roadside station just outside that Louisiana town, hoping to clear his mind, to laugh at the silliness of a king pumping his own gas. But fate had other plans. 3 leather-jacketed bikers had burst off their choppers, men whose faces were as weathered as their motorcycles, and one of them, a gaunt man named Red Slater, had snarled at Elvis, "Real men don't wear glitter or croon like chicks." Their boots scraped gravel as they closed in, smirking with beer-breathed arrogance. Elvis didn't straighten his collar or flash a celebrity grin. He simply set down the pump nozzle. "Just here for gas," he said quietly. But Red leaned in, venom in his eyes. "I know who you are. I see you on TV, prancing around like a peacock. You think that makes you a man?" Red's cronies laughed, their corduroy caps bobbing like sea anemones. Elvis drew in a measured breath. "I'm here to play," he replied, "not to argue." They circled him, a trio of vultures. Elvis felt the old fire surface, his mother's fierce protectiveness, the grit he'd carried from Tupelo. He met Red's gaze and tilted his head. "Go on inside," he said calmly. "There's nothing to see." Red spat on the pavement as he stepped back, pushing his helmet from his brow. "We'll see you on stage, glitter boy," he sneered, and swaggered away. Elvis watched them mount their machines and tear down the highway, their laughter hanging in the still air. He replaced the nozzle, returned his cap, and climbed back into his Cadillac, heart hammering. The show must go on. That night, the small-town auditorium buzzed with cheap excitement. Cheap seats, fold-out chairs, kids in the front row clutching souvenir programs. Elvis arrived in a tailored suit that glittered under the stage lights, stepping onto the platform with that trademark smile. He opened with Heartbreak Hotel, sliding into the lyrics with easy blues grace. The band followed, guitars shimmering, drums tapping the heartbeat of his legend. Halfway through the second song, the door at the side of the stage banged open. A roar of engines had begun outside, and now Red Slater swaggered in, leather vest glinting. He climbed atop one of the folding chairs in the back, towering over the seated crowd. Elvis caught sight of him from the corner of his eye, saw the raised arm, the green glass bottle poised for flight. The bottle sailed through the air in a slow arc, like a missile targeting a distant shore. It shattered against the wall behind Elvis, shards tinkling to the floor. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. The drummer froze, sticks in midair. The brass section caught its breath. Silence bloomed like a dark flower. Elvis set down his microphone. No encore, no lament. He took a single step back, head held high, and walked off the stage without a glance. The audience remained motionless, as if witnessing a crime rather than a cancellation. No one rushed him. No one clapped. In that hush, the betrayal stung more deeply than any bottle. Back in the dressing room, Elvis lowered his head and touched the medallion at his chest. The king of rock and roll was absent now, just a man who had felt the shame of being mocked before his own people. He let his shoulders sag as the roar in his mind settled into a low hum. The bikers' mocking laughter still echoed, but so did the memory of quieter victories. The time he calmed a crying child in the front row, or the moments backstage when music had been his only friend. Tonight he knew he would not sleep easily. He had been humiliated, but not defeated. With that thought, he rose, tossed the medallion onto the dressing table, and reached instead for his guitar. If he could not face them on stage, he would face himself in song, one note at a time. Elvis sat on the edge of a stiff hotel bed, the black satin sheets unfolded beneath him like a confession he wasn't ready to make. Moonlight filtered through heavy drapes, cutting silver slashes across the carpet. He stared at the small portable television on the dresser, its glow reflecting in his weary eyes. The late-night news anchor's words droned in the silence. Elvis Presley abruptly ended his Louisiana performance last night amid reports of biker intimidation. Critics say he fled the stage in fear. A guttural laugh escaped him. Fear. The irony stung worse than the bottle shards that had rained around him. He pressed his fingers to his temple, trying to still the tremor that had taken residence in his hands. The medallion against his chest felt heavy, dull as lead. He exhaled, letting the expletive burn in his throat. Colonel Tom Parker stomped into the room without knocking, clutching a crumpled copy of the morning paper. Headlines blazed. King retreats under biker threats? Parker's eyes flicked to the dresser, then back to Elvis. "We can't let this stand," he barked. "We'll file a defamation suit against those bikers and the townsfolk. Say it was crowd violence, not your fault." Elvis leaned back against the headboard. "No lawsuits." His voice was calm, deliberate. The colonel froze mid-rant. "What? You can't let them smear you." "I'm not looking for a courtroom victory," Elvis replied quietly. "I want to meet him, face to face. No lights, no microphones. Just me and him." Parker's mouth fell open. "You're kidding. You want to confront Red Slater alone?" Elvis's jaw tightened. Enough with lawyers and press conferences. I need to understand why he felt the need to humiliate me in public. The colonel rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You're talking about a known hothead who loves the roar of his gang. He won't see reason." "I'll find out," Elvis said, easing off the bed. He paced the carpet, each step measured, as if he were walking across a stage without an audience. "You know anyone who knows those bikers?" After a moment, Parker grunted. "There's a kid at the garage on Beale Street, works night shifts, fixes their bikes. Kid's nervous around big names, but he might tell you where Red hangs out." Elvis nodded, slipping into jeans and a leather jacket he kept for riding. "No security," he said. "I go alone." Parker's protest stalled on his lips. He knew enough to follow orders when Elvis's voice carried that certain quiet steel. The streets of Memphis at dawn carried the scent of coffee, exhaust, and something metallic, like a promise or a warning. Elvis walked to Baxter's garage under the pretense of needing an oil change. He entered through a side door, stepping softly over grease-stained concrete. A lone mechanic in a faded t-shirt and cap looked up from a dismantled carburetor. "Elvis Presley," the mechanic gulped, wiping hands on a rag. "Sorry, your Cadillac's on the lift." He swallowed, eyes darting toward the bays where heavy cruisers lined up. "You here for, bike tunes?" Elvis offered a tight grin. "Something like that. I'm looking for a friend of mine, Red Slater. You know him?" The mechanic's face paled. Red? Yeah, he's usually here at night, working on his '53 Harley, but he's a troublemaker. Don't get involved. Elvis tucked his hands into his jacket pockets. Troublemaker's exactly who I want to find. The mechanic licked his lips. He'll be here. Back corner. Quiet spot. He pointed through an open bay door where the morning sun glinted off chrome handlebars. Elvis nodded. Just let him know I'm here. The mechanic wiped sweat from his brow and gave a nervous glance. Elvis watched his retreating back, feeling the weight of every eye on him, the gods of grease and gears peering from oily shadows. Through the open garage door, Elvis saw Red Slater crouch beside his bike, spanner in hand, sweat-dark curls plastered to his forehead. He worked with meticulous care, as though each nut and bolt held the promise of freedom. Elvis stepped forward, boots echoing on the cement. Slater froze, wrench hovering. The other mechanics paused, eyes wide under fluorescent glare. Elvis closed the distance with slow purpose, hands relaxed at his sides. Red straightened, spanner clattering to the floor. He wiped his hands on his vest shaking like a man caught in a dream. You came here, he rasped. Elvis nodded. I came because I want to understand. His voice was steady, free of theatrics. Last night you humiliated me, but I need to know why. Red's jaw flexed, sweat beaded at his temples. You're that... He swallowed, choking on his own anger. You sold a dream. You had everything, while guys like me... He gestured at the bikes, the grease, the roar of engines waiting in their bays. We lost our brothers in the war, and you just kept singing. Elvis inhaled, feeling the old wartime memories stir. I lost people too, he said quietly. My mother, people I cared about, but I kept singing because it helped me survive. Maybe you never saw that. Slater's shoulders sagged, relief and shame warring in his gaze. I was angry. You had music, fame. I had silence. His voice cracked. When I saw you smiling up there, I hated you. I thought if I hurt you, I could hurt that world. He looked at his hands. I'm sorry. Elvis nodded, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. Then let's fix it. Not with fists. No one wins that way. Tell me your story. I'm listening. Slater closed his eyes once, then exhaled. The garage's hum resumed. Compressors, tools, the distant spark of welding torches. Elvis and Red stood amid the machinery, two men bound by loss, offering each other a different kind of victory, one founded on understanding, not violence. And in that clattering, grease-scented sanctuary, Elvis discovered that true strength could be quieter than a fist, deeper than a roar, and more lasting than any sequin-studded stage. A month rolled past under Memphis's steely sky before Elvis stopped talking about the incident at the garage. He picked up the phone one afternoon and quietly instructed Colonel Parker, book a small room at the Rendezvous Club next Wednesday. Not my name on the marquee. Invite only the guys who've been to the wars. No press. That night, Red Slater found a plain invitation slipped beneath his door on Cosset Street. An evening of music for those who served. The Rendezvous, 8 p.m. RSVP, EP. He stared at the card. The familiar scrawl triggered memories of that night by the pump. With trembling fingers, he slipped the invite into his pocket. On Wednesday, he arrived to find a dimly lit back room of the Rendezvous. The bar's main floor pulsed with honky-tonk piano and clinking glasses, but through a curtained arch lay a smaller space. Folding chairs set in rows facing a low riser, a single microphone on a stand, and a battered grand piano. Veterans in mismatched uniforms drifted in, some bearing medals, others nursing old wounds. Conversations hushed to murmurs as Elvis Presley entered without fanfare, clad in a simple navy sport coat and dark trousers. No sequins, no rhinestones, just plain clothes and plain purpose. Elvis lifted a hand in greeting. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice low yet carrying. "Tonight is for you. I won't speak long, I'll just sing." He nodded to the pianist, who struck the first piano chords of If I Can Dream, reimagined in a minor key, an opening both mournful and hopeful. Elvis began with no flourish. "There must be lights, burning brighter somewhere, got to be birds, singing in brighter skies." His voice wavered with raw emotion, each line shaped by more than melody, by real loss, by the weight of memories no stage could erase. The veterans sat rapt, eyes closed, letting the music carry them through trenches and patrols into a place where sorrow met solace. Halfway through the song, Elvis paused and spoke softly into the mic. "This one's for the brothers we lost, and the ones who came home but never left the battlefield." Then he resumed, voice steadier, but charged with empathy. As he sang the final chorus, the minor chords blossomed into a gentle resolution. When the last note faded, the room held a breath long enough to count on two hands. Then applause. Quiet at first, then a swell of gratitude that felt more like healing than praise. As the veterans rose, some shook Elvis's hand, some simply nodded, tears glistening. In the back row, Red Slater sat rigid, face unreadable. When the crowd thinned, Elvis stepped off the stage and walked to him. The bar's dim glow outlined Red's silhouette. Elvis held out his hand. "You made it," he said simply. Red's voice cracked as he answered. "I didn't know. I didn't think," Elvis squeezed his shoulder. "Thought you'd rather fight than listen. Glad you chose this." Red reached up and peeled the worn Slater's patch from his leather vest, a crimson shield embroidered with a snarling wolf's head. He held it out to Elvis. "I don't need this anymore," he said. "I don't need to prove I exist by scaring people." Elvis shook his head. "Keep it," he said quietly. "It's part of your story, but if you ever feel invisible again, come here. We'll sing together." Red tucked the patch into his pocket, eyes filling. "Thank you," he whispered. They stepped into the bar's main room, the hum of music and laughter waiting to welcome them. Elvis leaned closer. "One more thing." He pulled Red toward the bandstand. "Want to hear something?" Before an audience of veterans in search of sanctuary, Elvis struck a chord on the piano, then began the opening lines of a new arrangement, Mel Torme's Triad, but with lyrics reshaped to honor those who return as ghosts of themselves. "I know your steps. Echo on these streets, shadows you left. Follow every beat." Red listened, tears slipping free, as Elvis wove the veterans' names into his improvised stanza. When the final chord faded, Elvis stepped back and allowed the veterans to applaud, a benediction, not a spectacle. Later, as Red and Elvis exited into the cool night, the singer turned to him and said, "You don't have to fight anymore." Red nodded, his coat lighter somehow. "I don't." Elvis placed a hand on Red's shoulder and began to hum a quiet refrain. Neither of them spoke again as they walked down Beale Street, two men whose conflict began in anger but found resolution in song, bound together by the simple power of listening. And in that shared silence they discovered the truest victory, the understanding that one quiet performance can transcend 1,000 fights.